Welcome to the Inside Syracuse Basketball Podcast. I'm Mike Waters. Today on the podcast, I'm joined by former Syracuse basketball player Sam Penceal. Sam came to Syracuse in the same recruiting class that featured Dave Bing and Jim Boeheim. That class turned around a moribund program and turned it into an NCAA tournament team. But Sam is equally noteworthy for his efforts in education and administration. We talked about all of that in this edition of the Inside Syracuse Basketball Podcast.
Well, welcome back to another edition of the Inside Syracuse Basketball Podcast. And on this edition, we have just a wonderful guest, an outstanding guy who I've known for a while now, and I've been looking forward to having him on the show. It's former Syracuse basketball player Sam Penceal. Sam, it's great to see you. Welcome to the podcast.
Well, thank you, Mike. And it's good to have an opportunity to talk with you. We haven't been able to get together for a while, so this is as good a substitute as we can get for now.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to the next time you roll through town because we have our couple favorite places to meet. We met the one time with a whole bunch of your friends.
Yes.
Until they sponsor me, I'm not going to mention the place, but it's the most outstanding fried chicken this side of town. But to introduce you a little bit to the folks who they do need an introduction to you. Sam played at Syracuse from 1963 to 1966. And if those years sound familiar, that means you played with Jim Boeheim and Dave Bing and a whole host of other guys that turned this program around from maybe the worst program in the country about a year or two before you arrived on campus to a program that was in the NCAA tournament when you left. You came out of New York City, boys high school. A lot of folks are going to know that they're going to recognize that name because, man, that high school has produced a lot of outstanding athletes and other folks over the years. And of course, when it was boys and girls high school, Pearl Washington came out of that same school.
Yeah.
I had to look you up a little bit. You're a member of the Boys High Hall of Legends. You're a member of the Brooklyn Hall of Fame. And you're a member of the City College Hall of Fame, which is interesting. And you're going to have to take us there at some point during the podcast. But first of all, how did you end up coming to Syracuse out of New York City and out of Boys High School back when the program really, it wasn't the type of basketball program it is today?
Well, what happened was I came to Syracuse in 1962. Okay, we had won the city championship that year in Madison Square Garden, and Fred Lewis attended that game. And after the game, he came in and he told me, he said, we have a kid coming from DC, and I think that, with the two of you, we could have the best backcourt in the country. And of course, he said, this kid's name is Dave Bing. And so as it turns out, I played against Dave in a tournament in, I think it might have been in some part of central New Jersey, where there were teams from Washington, Philadelphia, New York, and that New Jersey area. And on the team from Washington was Dave Bing, John Shoemate, Ernie Austin, and several other guys who became real well known. On the team from Philadelphia was Earl Monroe and a number of other guys from that area who became top college players as well. And so when we played against Washington, Dave and my man Wally Goodwin's going to be angry with me for telling this story, but Dave was the first guy I ever saw who blocked Wally Goodwin's jump shot. Wally Goodwin is about 6'1", 6'2". He has these huge thighs, and he jumps from standstill at least a foot and a half off the ground to shoot his jump shot. So anyway, when I saw Dave, I realized that this was a special talent. So 7 of us came to Syracuse, and one guy named Fran, who was not supposedly be driving, drove into somebody's living room one night And that's how Boeheim got the scholarship. Boeheim came to Syracuse on a Apostle Golf Scholarship. He came out for the team. When he got on the team, he and Dave became roommates. And of course, as you know, the rest is history. So that's how I ended up coming there. And I ended up going to Boys High because two of our junior high school teachers were Boys High graduates. And they called up Mickey Fisher and said, he said to him, there was Alan Hopewell and Elma Sapaden. And so Hopewell called Fisher. Fisher said, told Fisher he wanted him to take care of me. And then, of course, after I went there, of course, Vaughn came over as well.
Vaughn Harper.
Yes, I don't know if you know the story of our relationship, Vaughn and my relationship.
I know you were very, very close.
Well, Vaughn and I went to school together from junior high school, which is Wadley Junior High School here in Harlem. Well, I'm in Cleveland these days, but it's in Harlem. And then we went to Boys High together, and then we went to Syracuse together. And it used to be that when you saw one of us without the other, the first question was, where is the other? That's how our relationship was. So that's the story of how I got to Syracuse. That's how I got to participate in the turning around of the program, which is, as we all know, world renowned these days.
Now, so you're playing in the PSAL championship game in Madison Square Garden, and Fred Lewis just comes into the locker room. Had you ever spoken to him or met Fred Lewis before?
No, I had never seen him before that. And of course, when you read the stories, he's told just about all of us the same thing about how, that person, along with Dave, would be the number one person on the team, or the number two person on the team. But he was a very good recruiter. And he had that gift for gab and that ability to make everybody feel like they were the most important person in the room. But he did not necessarily know how to get the best out of me. And so that was a bit of a problem for us because he thought I was lazy. Because I wasn't one of these guys who was always acting like I'm putting out a whole lot of effort, right?
Oh, sure.
And what he didn't understand was that I was expert at economy of motion, so that I wasn't the fastest guy around, but I was quick, right? Yeah. So I could beat you from here to there, but I couldn't beat you from here to the end of the court, right? And so he didn't quite understand that, and even though as a matter of fact, I very seldom played in the backcourt because I always guarded the best guy on the other team, regardless of how small or how tall he was.
Well, I was about to say, I'm surprised to hear that like Fred wouldn't appreciate you in any way because you have a reputation of being just an outstanding defensive player throughout your Syracuse career, which seems to mesh really well with a guy named Dave Bing.
Yes. Well, so some folks have this, they have their own idea about how things ought to go and how things ought to look and how things ought to sound, right? And the same thing actually happens in education as well, which is interesting because of the fact that in good classrooms where kids are engaged and you find that there is a lot of good noise going on because the kids are engaged, they're working together, they are enjoying themselves. And this is what promotes learning. And this is what promotes good habits, which is actually what happens on the court as well, in practice. So there are coaches who feel that in order for the things to work properly and look right, you need to run three steps down the court, turn right, run 4 more steps, turn left, that sort of thing. And if you don't do it exactly like that, then they're not happy, right? So that's the kind of thing that happened, with us here. But
I wanted to go back to something else you said about Fred putting this class together. He seemed to sell everybody the same thing. Like he told you that between you and Dave, you could be this great backcourt.
Right.
Other guys, Frank Nicoletti out of
Yes.
Jersey City, New Jersey, very, 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 very highly rated high school player, is also told how valuable he's going to be.
Yes.
I've talked with Rex Trowbridge, another member of your class. He told me that Fred said that he was the crown jewel.
Yes. And Rex was my first roommate.
Oh, really?
Yes, which was an experience in itself. Because, Rex is from the Albany area, and he'd never been around Black guys. And while I had, been around white guys, I'd never roomed with a white roommate before. And so our experiences were, the exact opposite. And so it took a little while for us to mesh, but I am happy to say that he is my brother of 60 or more years after our coming together in 1962.
Isn't that amazing? That's something interesting Fred Lewis did with basically his first recruiting class. He could have put you and Dave Bing together. And Rex Trowbridge had a high school teammate in Dick Abelman.
Right.
He could have put Rex and Dick Abelman together, but instead, I know you roomed with Rex. Frank Nicoletti roomed with Dave Bing.
Right.
And that's something that Fred fixed a year later.
Yes. Well, we do have to give him credit for that, And the other thing where he was a bit ahead of the curve was that he engaged in some psychological analysis in order to put us together as well.
Really?
There was a guy named, I think his name was Dr. Anderson. And what he did was he gave us these analytical tests to decide, to make some determination about which of the characteristics each of us had that was most compatible with another member on the team. And it also gave some insight into how to motivate the different individuals. And so this was at the very beginning of what's popular these days known as sports psychology.
That's amazing.
In my other life, I'm a certified teaching tennis pro, and as part of my training, I've had training in psychological development for players, how to improve their motivation, how we when things are going well and things are just flowing nice and smoothly and it looks so effortless, we have a saying that the guy's in the zone. Mm-hmm. And so the sports psychologist, well, at least Jim Lahr, who's the person I studied with, he refers to this as the place, the most comfortable area for playing, right? And so what happens is, I forget the exact term right at the moment, but what happens is you get out of that, right? Things cause you to be disrupted, right? Guys make you angry, they throw you off and interrupt your focus. Yeah. And so you can train players on how to retain that, get back into that area of comfort. And so you can do the same thing with children in school as well, when you have trained your staff and the people in the building, correctly. So he was good for in terms of my development in ways that weren't necessarily appreciate initially, nor recognized initially.
Yeah. He sounds like he was a little bit ahead of his time in some respects there.
Yes, he was. Yeah.
Wow. That's interesting. Now, I have to ask anybody who ever was around Syracuse basketball at that time the same question. What was your first impression of Jim Boeheim on the basketball court?
Well, Jim Boeheim was the original Pete Maravich. You remember Pete Maravich was known for having the floppy socks?
Of course, yes.
Well, Boeheim was the first one to have floppy socks. You know, we wore those long socks, and his always fell down around his ankles, right? And he had the ability to be in the right place at the right time. Like, for instance, we'd be jumping up over the rim trying to get the ball, and the ball would jump over our hands into his, and he would get in and make the layup, or he would get in and make the pass, right? Yeah. And so when the coach said, run the play this way, he did it exactly like the coach said, right? And so, we could see early on that he had the makings of being a good coach because of the fact that he stuck so closely to the things that coaches emphasized in terms of the team, the way that teams were coached in those days, right? And there was a difference in the way that teams were coached based on the areas of the city and the country that they came from, right?
Yeah.
And so, as I said, we could see that Boeheim was cut out to do the kind of thing that he's been doing for the last 50 years or so.
And Jim and Dave Bing end up becoming roommates second year because Fred began to realize that Frank Nicoletti might have been a little bit more of a social a social guy, and he wanted his star Dave Bing to be with the bookish Jim Boeheim, right?
Yeah, I would imagine that had something to do with it, because most of us were a bit on the wild side, during those days, and of course, so Dave, having been married, he was a bit more settled, yes. and so a guy like Boeheim was a good deal more suitable for him than hanging out with Frank Nicoletti.
Who, by the way, I have to get on the same podcast because I have to give Frank a chance to tell his stories soon.
Yes, of course.
You guys, as a group, end up doing exactly what Fred had envisioned, what he had sold you on to turn this program around. I mean, you go to the NIT your sophomore year, which is the first year you guys can play varsity ball. And as seniors, you win 22 games, you go 22-6, and you make the NCAA tournament. You get it. You beat Davidson in the tournament. What was that turnaround like? And especially your senior year when you guys averaged almost 100 points a game.
Well, I remember those days very explicitly and very succinctly because I was really disappointed when we did not make it to the Final Four, because the Final Four was held at the University of Maryland, which is the area where John Mackey lived. And I was looking forward to going to having a party at his house when we went to the tournament, but we didn't quite make it.
Because you and John, the famous football player, you and John had become friends at Syracuse, correct?
Yes. Well, as a recruit, my first plane ride on the Mohawk airline, which was known for flying very low in those days. When I got to Syracuse, the first two people I met were Ernie Davis and John Mackey. And wow. And John and his wife Sylvia and my wife Bernadette and I have been special friends since college, right? Mm-hmm. And so that, I remember those, as I said, I remember those days very, very, very well. We, and in fact, we came within 2 points of averaging 100 points a game that season. And I remember that explicitly because I had an opportunity to shoot a jump shot at the top of the key that, had I made it, would have made it 100 points for that game. But I passed it off to Dave. He shot it and it didn't go in. And so we ended up, being within 2 points of averaging 100 points a game. So that was an exquisite memory. And then we had all of those good memories from the tournaments that we played in. I have to tell you about this quickly. This is and one of the things I will eventually have to end up writing about. But on the weekend that we played in the tournament in Miami, we played in the tournament that had Army, which was coached by the guy from Indiana,
Bob Knight.
Bobby Knight's first team, on which Mike Krzyzewski was a member, right? So it was Army, Princeton, which had Bill Bradley, and Miami, which had Rick Barry, and us, right?
Those are a couple good scorers there.
Huh?
Those are a couple guys who could score.
Oh, yes. And so listen to the story though. so Ali Cassius Clay was training at the famous Fifth Street Gym in Miami.
Sure.
Jules Reichel, who was our trainer, was the trainer for the 1960 Olympics. So he knew Cassius Clay. So he took Dave and me over to the gym to meet Clay. And Clay was going to take us around and show us the town, but we had to come back to practice. And so the next day, the first night, I forget who we played. One night I played against Bill Bradley, and we held him to the fewest points he ever scored in his college career. And then the next night, I think the first night we played against Miami, right? Because I guarded Rick Barry, and Rick Barry was sick. And so he sat on the bench with a towel over his shoulder, and he never warmed up or anything. And he came out and he scored 27 points on me. And then, so Ali was there with his guys sitting along the first row. Wow. At the end of the court, talking trash to us as we were running up and down the court, right? And so then the next night, I guarded Bill Bradley, as I said, and we won the tournament. That's one of those, very memorable occasions. And we, when the following year, so this was the December of '64, I think that was '63. The following September, the following Christmas, we played Princeton in Madison Square Garden, right?
Wow.
And so I guarded Bill Bradley again, and he scored 36 points on me that night. So everybody in the world was there who saw. I remember seeing that game, So that's my, one of my some of my explicit memories of being involved in turning the program around.
Still, though, I mean, you were right on the cusp of the Final Four that year. That was an Elite Eight. The East Region Final lost to Duke.
Yes.
And that was a Duke team that was just completely loaded with future pros.
Yes.
And you guys were right there, which is amazing considering it's a program that was 2-22 5 years earlier.
Yes. That was really something, a nice time to be involved, in the university's program. Although there were some negative memories that we have as well, but the good memories far outweigh the bad ones as far as I'm concerned. And I'm really proud of the fact that I'm a Syracuse grad, and I have a tremendous Syracuse family. In terms of people, who have come forward when I was in most need, So this is an experience that I highly recommend for other folks who are interested in going to college. And in fact, one of the things that I have done is that I've committed myself to a scholarship in Vaughn's and my wife's name. And what I've committed myself to is raising for each $250,000 that I can raise. We will have a $10,000 scholarship established in perpetuity, which means that forever there
Wow.
would be a $10,000 a year scholarship for a person in education and another in communication, honoring my wife and Vaughn. So I'm doing that, and as I go down the road, I will make sure that happens. So again, that's another of the things that have been motivated by my experiences at SU.
That's a fantastic goal.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
hope you're able to get there soon.
Oh, we'll get there. I've not been able to really publicize it yet, right? So once I get
start.
once I get things together and I get the word out to our friends, we will be able to raise $500,000 in a short time, I would think.
What was one of the times you were most in need, and who among your Syracuse friends came forward to help?
Well, actually, I've been through a period here in the last year and a half where if things could go wrong, they did. If I had all sorts of things that I had planned that did not go the way that I expected, or in the time that I expected. And so there was all sorts of help that I needed. And I am really happy to say that the people who came forward to help me first and most were the people who are part of my Syracuse family. I mean, I've had like, for instance, I'll just tell you this another quick story. One of my good buddies is named David Core. And David Core is a Syracuse grad who was a couple of years ahead of me. And he graduated, the last day of classes for him, we went downtown to see Lilies of the Field with Sidney Poitier.
Yeah.
And we had been drinking some, as we used to refer to it, as Chickapoo Joy Juice, and sitting in the theater, I'm singing, and he threatens to smack me upside the head. So if I didn't stop, but I'm saying all this to proceed this point, that Dave became one of the 7 Black bankruptcy court judges in the country. And Bernadette and I went to visit his courtroom in Chicago once, and it was such a gas sitting there watching these people grovel to my man, who and in the bankruptcy court, the judges sit like 6 or 7 feet above everybody else, So it was something to watch that. But anyway, the point that I'm getting to is that we hadn't seen each other and for a couple of years prior to my wife's death, and we talked several weeks ago. And then he called me one day and he said, you told me about all of this stuff that you've been going through. He says, what can I do to be helpful? Right?
Yeah.
So I've had people like that who are part of my teammates from Syracuse, who are athletes, and people who were my classmates and people I knew. And then there are people from around the country who are my teammates based on our common experiences, some of whom are Syracuse people and others are from the city area and other places. But those are the people, those are the experiences that resonate most with me regarding my experience on the Hill.
We said we were going to talk a little bit about your work as an educator and administrator, and especially how it relates to some of your projects now.
Yes. Well, I have been since the October of 2018, and that year I began training for a bike ride from Cleveland to Cincinnati, which is 350 miles, which I did in a week. But as I was about to begin preparing for it, my former assistant principal, Darlene, introduced me to a plant-based nutritional supplement made by a company called Juice Plus. And I began using the supplement. And since that time, I have lost more than 40 pounds. I eat half as much as I used to, and I have twice as much energy. And so what I am committed to doing now is I have set up an educational program whose aim is to teach parents and their children how to grow food in their own living rooms, and also provide opportunities for an entrepreneurial experience, right?
Okay.
And with the idea of showing the connection between nutrition and their children's future financial independence. And financial independence meaning that you have enough money coming in so that you don't have to work unless you want to. You have enough money set aside for an emergency fund, and you have enough money set aside to pay your taxes. So that's what constitutes financial independence. And I am interested these days in sharing this kind of information with parents and young folks, so that we can help younger men, and particularly younger Black men, understand and learn how to be able to use their assets so that they will be able to leave something for the people who come behind them. And so that I have a program set up around that, and that I've been working on, that's coming together slowly. And it's coming together with the help of a lot of Syracuse people. Like for instance, Bill Brodsky, who is the retired chairman of the Chicago Board of Options Exchange. He was our manager at Syracuse.
Oh, wow.
And he and I have been friends since, again, 60 more years, right?
Yeah.
And so, I have the input and the influence of people like that. And the other person that I want to mention in this regard is my former classmate, Eric Muller, who is, he is one of the country's top public relations people, who was most recently honored by the 100 Black men here in New York City for his contribution to their organization. But he's one of the people I am relying on to guide me through doing these things that I am in the process of doing. So along with this,
cool.
I'm also, and I think I may have mentioned this, but I'm resurrecting my training business to train educators and community engagement, people who are involved in community engagement, who are working with the schools. So those are things that I'm doing that are keeping me motivated these days, and keeping me from going crazy as well,
If anybody listening to this wants to know a little bit more, see more about you, you have a website, right? Is it sampenceal.org?
It's sampenceal.com.
.com. Okay. Yeah.
Yes.
So we can direct people to there.
And when you go to that, you have to check the 3 bars up top on the right to get the drop-down menu. But that gives people a great deal of information about the work that I've done in education, my educational background, the work
Which is extensive. Yeah, the work you've done is extensive. Now, we can't get out of here without figuring out, with all the Hall of Fames that you're in, one of them being the City College Hall of Fame.
Yes.
Where you were the men's and women's tennis coach.
Yes.
How does a Syracuse basketball player of some fame end up coaching tennis at City College of New York?
Well, I also have a degree from City College.
Okay, you got your
Yes,
master's.
I have a master's in reading from City College,
Okay,
which is one of the top reading programs in the country. But so what happened was that after I stopped playing basketball when I was around 30, I started playing tennis, and I I took lessons and I began to get good at it, and people asked me to show them things that I was doing. So I went and studied with Dennis Vandermeer, he's deceased now, but he was the former president of the Professional Tennis Registry. And as a part of my involvement with them, I was a national tester. So what happens with the program, you go and you take a course on how to teach, you take that course for a week, and then you go back to your area. And if you don't get the mark on the course that you want, and you can go back and you can work with a person like myself, who was a tester, who would help you with your teaching skills as well as retest you. And so I did that. And so my friend Marvin Dent was the coach at City College, and he decided to give it up. And he said to me, he said, "Listen, man, I'm giving this up, so why don't you come on and take it?" So since I had had begun getting my certification for teaching, I decided to take the job. And so it turned out to be another of my experiences about which I'm most happy, because they have I think it's called the Sophie Davis Medical School, in which the students start out and they get a degree in medicine in 5 years, I think. And so when it got started was during the time that I was I was coaching. And some of my guys had to miss practice because they were in that program, and who are now top doctors all over the country, So,
wow.
so those are, and then I have some other former students who are outstanding people these days. In fact, one of my former students is Isu Mott, who is now I think he's vice president for diversity or something of that nature for the Charlotte Hornets. And he worked with the USTA, and he was in the program when I ran the program at the Armory. I'll just tell you this last part about this. When the Armory here in Harlem, the 369, has the junior program, which is going on now, which I ran in the 80s, in the beginning of the 80s. And when I ran the program, James Blake's father and his mother used to come and work in the program with us. And James used to sit on the floor he wasn't as tall as the net yet. And we used to toss him balls after we got finished with the other kids. So, I've had all sorts of wonderful memories like that helps to keep me going.
Well, that's fantastic. It's amazing. I mean, we could probably sit here for another hour listening to some more of your stories, but unfortunately, we've kind of come to the end of our time here. It's been a pleasure having you on the podcast, Sam, and it's so good to see you and talk to you.
Yeah, it's the same here. And I look forward to getting past Syracuse one of these days so we can get together for a meal.
You better. You real soon. I look forward to that. Hop on your bike, and it's just a few hours down the thruway.
All right, I'll give it a shot.
A guy who played with Jim Boeheim and Dave Bing and friends with John Mackey, and it's just an incredible life. And you've been so successful in your post-athletics career. It's just an amazing story that you can write, Sam. So thank you again for joining me here.
I'm going to do that. And I finally remembered the term I was trying to think of. Ideal performance state is when the guys are in the zone. So anyway, hey, Mike, it's really good. I enjoyed this. And again, I look forward to us getting together on the first chance that we get.
All right. Sounds good. Thank you,
Okay.
Sam.
Okay, my man, take it easy.